Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Pro Wrestling Report PrimeTime Super Show on a Saturday night, June 13th. It's Saturday the 13th. Damian Nelson coming to you here from the remote PWR studios, and I am joined by one, and thank God there's only one, David Octavius the Tiberius, the alleged backyard, knockout, straight edge, hardcore, Hall of Famer hero. Did I miss something? Straight edge.
You missed one time, but that's okay. I understand. Hey, you have a lot on your plate right now.
Actually, I have no food in front of me at all.
No?
No.
Who was that walking in the background just now?
That's an apparition, a ghost.
Oh, I see. Sweet.
How are you?
Happy Saturday. Hey, we are on the eve.
Saturday.
We are on Backlash Eve. I cannot wait. Get to watch the greatest wrestling match of all time tomorrow night.
No, greatest wrestling match ever, Mr. Schiavone.
Ever. That's the same thing. All time, ever. Just the spelling, just the details.
No,
the
ever
context.
includes the future. All time includes only the past.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that. Let me jot that down. Ever.
Do you know the difference between a moment and a minute?
E-R. No, what's that?
I'm asking. I'm looking for some help.
A moment happens right now. A minute's like in 60 seconds.
Folks, thank you for joining us. We are here on Fight TV on our Saturday night show, and we've got a lot to talk about, folks, including in just a moment, we're going to talk about, the latest in the Jeff Hardy saga, especially after what happened last night on SmackDown between him and Sheamus. And we're also going to talk about, here in the top story, TNA has been very active lately. In fact, a former WWE star debuted for the company this week, and more.
NXT star. Let's not say NXT star.
Under the parent company of WWE.
Yes.
So I was right, and you interrupted me unnecessarily.
Carry on.
And then we will go into the lounge after we get an update on how they are trying to screw me in the PWR fantasy draft, but my lawyers are on this, so just go right ahead, Meathead. Try as you may. We'll talk to him after this segment. And then from there, we go into the lounge where we're going to talk about Charlotte Flair. Is she truly the chosen one? This reporter thinks so. That opinionist doesn't. We'll see what the rest of the guys have to say in the lounge. And we'll also talk about whether or not Jim Cornette is on his way to AEW. We'll get some different perspectives after talking about it with Hurricane Helms this past Thursday on Primetime. And Backlash, as Dave talked about, the greatest wrestling match ever is being presented to us, at least advertised to us. We'll talk about what might actually happen in that matchup tomorrow night at Backlash. But Dave, before all that, let's talk right now about tonight's top story, and that is Jeff Hardy. Last week, I think it was, we talked about, and you said quite vividly, how it was the wrong call for them to bring his personal demons, if you will, into the story. Now, we saw last week on SmackDown, they cleaned that up quite a bit. Jeff had been framed, and they simply, I guess, sort of took advantage of the fact that people were taking advantage of his prior demons, as they're always called. But then tonight, last night, contract signing on SmackDown, that all got weird and not tasteful. Not tasty, I'm sure, for one of the participants. But do you give a reprieve at all to WWE for their post-week one, so the subsequent weeks, the last and this, of their handling of the Jeff Hardy situation? Does it soften the blow at all, since we thought initially they were going into a story of he's a drunk, he crashed and ran over Elias, to now someone else use that as part of a storyline to accuse and frame him of being back on the wagon, if you will, or off the wagon? What say you now?
I still don't like it. And then, of course, like everything, there's layers like an onion, or if you watch Shrek, a parfait. It was basically done to...
I'm making waffles.
It was basically done to get Elias off TV, who's still injured. It's like, that's why you have Jeff Hardy hit him, or someone hits him with the car, or he's hit with the car, and you frame Jeff Hardy to take Elias off TV for the next, who knows how many couple months.
But it also got us the Hardy-Sheamus situation. And what else would Sheamus be doing?
But here, Sheamus is so talented. He's so good. He doesn't have to be like that. And here's the thing. What are they going to do? Have 2, maybe 3 weeks worth of matches with Sheamus and Jeff Hardy, and then they go on to something else? I just don't get it. It's almost like they have these 2 guys that are, let's be honest, I think Sheamus is a Hall of Famer. what his career's done. Jeff Hardy, absolutely. So they have two legit stars, all-star guys, Hall of Fame guys, and now they're putting them in a program, but with a really weird, not cool backstory. They could have done so many other different things. They could have just talked about how, Jeff Hardy's been the chosen one, and he's always been given opportunities, and Sheamus hasn't always been. And of course, Sheamus could say he was on the shelf for how long, not because of being suspended. I didn't get the big hero's welcome. I'm the former champ. I'm the former tag champ. I'm the former, Intercontinental champ. All these, all the titles that Sheamus has. And he could be jealous that way. I just think that in today's world, when everyone can be easily offended by almost everything, they went about it the wrong way. They could have done something else that wouldn't have been so messy, especially right now.
So even the fact that after the fact, that's not the direction they're going in, that is, it still leaves a bad taste in your mouth that they even went.
It does. And, I talked about this because, again, who knows how many kids now can't watch anymore?
What do you mean?
Well, I mean, if you're on the fence about letting your kids watch wrestling and Jeff Hardy's their favorite, and that show goes off the air insinuating he was arrested for drinking and driving, you really want to have little Jimmy or baby Patrice watch the next week to see what happens?
Little Jimmy?
Yeah.
I don't think he's around anymore.
Well, he's now I think like a junior in high school. He's older, obviously. But you get the point.
Look, I like the fact that it didn't go deeper. I like the fact that this was a 1 week thing. I like the fact that they didn't sensationalize and capitalize on it as much as we feared that they would. I thought it was good, and I think the twist has been good. I'm liking Sheamus and Jeff Hardy as a program. I think it was a good place to get. Now we've got the Elias thing later down the road too. This is meaningful for Jeff Hardy, meaningful for Sheamus. If they weren't in a program together from this story initially 2 weeks ago, I'm not sure I'd care about either of them right now.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I think it's good that they work together because they will have really good matches together. Because they've been around, they're seasoned. I hate to use that word, but they're seasoned vets, and they can tell stories and put together some really good matches that won't go 110 miles an hour.
All right. Well, I think it's at least good to say though that it didn't keep going, this story, if you will, and it's.
Well, they can't have it keep going because how would Jeff show up at TV?
What do you mean?
Well, if he's always drunk, how's he going to get there?
Uber, Lyft.
Yeah, but they wouldn't let him in the building.
Why not?
Dude, they take temperatures to make sure your body temperature isn't above 99 degrees. If you walk in, your body temperature is going to be elevated.
Drinking gives you a fever?
Absolutely. You know that. Good. How often do you sweat when you drink? All the time.
I don't sweat when I drink. That's wasting alcohol.
It elevates your body temperature.
Oh, now you're a doctor.
No, but I read WebMD often. I'm very good at it.
Oh, gosh. All right. I thought maybe you watched Dr. Oz during the day, and that's how you got your.
No.
No, Dr. Phil.
I used to watch Dr. 90210. I watched that one a little bit.
Was that the one with Jason Priestley? Luke Perry?
Kind of.
Jungle Boy's dad?
No, Tiffany Amber Thiessen, I think, was on that one.
All right. Well, next up, ladies and gentlemen, our top story, if you will, is, you know what, actually, we're going to save that. I'm dying to hear, Dave. I'm dying to hear, before we talk about WWE stars going to TNA, what I'm dying to hear is Meathead's update, because, he's been very coy with me.
It's so slanted.
What's slanted?
Just how he scores everything.
How?
There is no way I'm not in first place.
There's every way you're in first place. I
have the best team on paper.
I'm in first place. I'm not disputing the ballots. I'm not disputing the scoring. I trust it. I just picked the better team than you. And now you guys are trying to screw me out of Fighter Fest points because it's 2 weeks long and my talents can win and get me more points, and it's duplicate.
It's not on pay-per-view.
It wasn't last year either. but it's a
We
special
didn't have a draft last year.
Read the rules at PWR360.com. We absolutely had a draft last year. It was the biggest draft we've ever had. It was huge. It was humongous, enormous. People are still talking about it today. People tell me how great that draft was. Just go back and look, watch. It's there. Look,
Okay. All right.
Fighter Fest is a special event, is it not?
It's on regular TV. It's a special name. I'm more excited about watching. I'm more excited about watching Billy Gunn fight MJF next week on AEW.
Billy who? Because I understand he may not be Gunn anymore.
Well, no, he's Billy, but I'll call him Billy Gunn. I can call him Billy Gunn because he's Billy Gunn to me. He'll forever be Billy Gunn.
What would you call Meathead? Let's call him right now, folks. It's time for the draft update. Let's go to the man they call Meathead with the score and the update coming out of NXT TakeOver last weekend.
After NXT in your house last Sunday, the top of the leaderboard gets tighter, and Damian is no longer in last, at least by himself. Welcome to the PWR Draft Update. I'm the man they call Meathead. The new totals after NXT's takeover in your house. I still lead at 505. Andrew Baydala catching up at 475. David Hero at 445. Linda and Damian both tied in absolute dead last at 415. Now, there's plenty of points to be had this coming Sunday at Backlash, which is live on the WWE Network and on pay-per-view. I have 3 champions going this Sunday. I've got Drew McIntyre, I've got Asuka, I've got Bayley in matches, plus Jeff Hardy. Andrew has AJ Styles, and he's also got Edge in a wrestling match, which is not a special match. But Dave has got Braun defending his title and Andrade with a chance to win back his title. Linda will have Zelina Vega showing up. She's got Alexa Bliss and Nikki Cross trying to get their titles back, as well as The Miz and Morrison in a title match. And Damian has Orton in a wrestling match, most likely taking over the bottom of the list again. Now, a quick update on Fyter Fest from AEW. This will not be a event that scores points. Damian, I'm sorry, as it will be broadcast on TNT. So, Damian, you are out of luck. Possibly more matches to be announced for this Sunday. Make sure you stay tuned to PWR 360. It's my first time talking, folks. PWR360.com and PWR360 on Twitter for more details. And don't forget to check out PWR Today every Monday through Friday with different guests, including Damian, who I don't know if he's going to want to show up anymore to the program. For the PWR Draft Update, I'm the man they call Meathead. Thanks for stopping by. So long, everyone.
The wait is over. All Elite Wrestling is now available on AEW+.
What are we seeing?
This is your chance to watch AEW Dynamite, commercial-free and live every Wednesday night.
Let's do this!
Exclusively on the Fight Digital Sports television platform. AEW Plus is available in over 100 countries outside the U.S., Canada, Germany, and France. AEW Plus can be viewed on your smart TV, mobile device, Apple TV, Roku, Amazon Fire, or at Fight.tv.
You ain't seen nothing yet.
Starting this month, AEW Plus will also feature every episode of AEW Dark. Download the Fight app now and join the revolution today.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Pro Wrestling Report. Welcome back to the Pro Wrestling Report Primetime Super Show. Damian Nelson still here, along with David Octavius Tiberius, the alleged backyard. You already heard that crap. Hall of Famer hero. But we're also joined by the rest of the PWR team. Well, you know, every week the team is dwindling. Just Andrew and Jason tonight. Linda's got no power. Josh is having kids. So you know, it's the 4 squares of doom tonight. Jason, how are you out east? Well, just up the road from me. What are you up? 195, 295, I-95?
Yeah, I-95 sounds good enough.
Do you drive? When's the last time you've driven a vehicle, Jason?
Actually, the last time I drove was last week. That was the first time in 3 months that I drove.
Really? I thought it'd be a little longer. Where do you leave your automobile, your sled?
Well, right now I leave it. I have to park it in the street. I don't have access to the driveway for the homeowner right now, so that's why I don't want to go anywhere. As soon as I leave, someone's gonna slip right in and steal my spot. So I just say I'm not going to go anywhere.
3 months. You haven't left for 3 months to keep that spot. That is commitment right there.
That is called I call it a spite spot because I know there's somebody down the block who badly wants to park there, and I just refuse to give in. So I just walk. I walk everywhere.
How I miss New York.
That's what I'm fascinated by. I've been taught to believe that if you live in the metropolitan areas of New York, and I know you're in Brooklyn, but that's all the same to me, New York and Chicago, that you just don't own a car because you pay more to park it than you ever use it.
Correct.
Well, if you're in the city, then you would be crazy, I think, to have a car unless you need one. But yeah, I mean, if you're in the outer boroughs, you want to, go somewhere on a weekend or something. How else are you going to get around?
To the Hamptons? Do you have a house in the Hamptons?
No, no. I'd be broadcasting from there if I did. I'd be on lockdown.
Andrew Baydala, how the hell are you?
I'm very well. How are you, Damien?
I am tremendous. You know why I'm tremendous? Because we just heard Meathead tell the world that Fyter Fest will not count for points. So I fired his ass because clearly he's stupid.
You can't fire Meathead.
Clearly he's stupid. Fyter Fest is free this year on TNT. It was free last year on Bleacher Report. There's no difference except for the channel by which it's broadcasting on. It's still a special event. If it counted last year in the draft, which it did because we had a huge, tremendous, major draft last year. It was the biggest draft anyone's ever seen. Then it should count this year as well. Believe me. Just take my word for it. So I'm content in third to first place in the draft. And I'm going to win. So that's all we need to talk about draft-wise, because I just don't want to embarrass you, Andrew, and you, Dave, anymore. So let's get to the wrestling. Let's go. This is the lounge, and I love being in the lounge. It's so comforting to be able to be in a lounge when you can't be in a real lounge. And when I say lounge, Dave and Andrew, because I know Jason's a good soul and he doesn't do these mischievous things that you guys do, I'm not talking about the VIP lounge in the back of the establishment.
Oh, well, I'm out of here then. Thanks.
Oh, it's also cheaper.
Yes. Well, right?
Being here?
Because didn't Dave take your credit card one time? Well, that's a story for another day.
It was one time. It was just one time.
And
Linda was.
If you paid that much for one time, then you
should have seen. It was gold. It was gold plated.
I mean, speaking of cars, Jason could have bought himself a new car with the amount of money you spent.
Maybe two. little zip cars too. Yeah.
Well, boys, let's get right down to it. A lot to talk about here in the lounge tonight, and what I want to start with is a bit of an in-depth discussion on Charlotte Flair. Charlotte Flair, who lost the NXT Women's Championship at NXT TakeOver in Your House last weekend, and give us your thoughts on that too, because that was an interesting show. But there's been a lot of discussion now. Charlotte, this past Monday, thrust into a situation with Asuka. Looks like that's going to be her next phase or next story, if you will, which I 100% support. But there's been a lot of discussion about how Charlotte is not the golden child that everyone thought she would be. Charlotte is not the top of the women's division as people thought she would be. And you can look at that from a number of different perspectives. But I want to hear your perspectives on where Charlotte is now. And maybe you can help explain to the world why where she is now is in direct relation to the fact that she did lose that NXT Women's Championship this past Sunday at TakeOver. And we'll start with you, Andrew, just because
I think Charlotte Flair is the best women's wrestler in WWE and in the world. She's getting a lot of John Cena, Roman Reigns comparison because they were, stuffed down everyone's throat. And everyone wants her to not be in the championship picture anymore, which is ridiculous. Stop whining. Enjoy what you're getting. Charlotte Flair probably won't be wrestling in the next 5 years. Hopefully she is, but that's just the shelf life of a professional wrestler, especially who's on 3 brands at once. And I think, the criticism of her being over-pushed or oversaturated is ridiculous. Her losing the NXT championship, women's championship at In Your House, I think was good. She needs to get off that brand. I think she was brought there for the ratings. Didn't really do much for the ratings. And I think who they gave it to is primed, locked, and ready. So I don't mind, and I'm happy she didn't take the pinfall or submission loss there.
It was a great match at NXT TakeOver, though, it was a tremendous match. It was the main event. It was top of the card. But, Jason Solomon, what do you say about Charlotte Flair, who actually – I watched the Ric Flair WWE 24 thing, and I should know this as a broadcast journalist, but her name's not really Charlotte.
It's Ashley.
No, it's Ashley.
I missed that whole chapter.
Yeah.
Well, you've been in China for a while, too. Let's not forget that.
Okay, Jason.
On that note, I think Drew made a good point, although he kind of contradicted himself there when he said, well, it's not a case where she's really overexposed, but I'm happy to get her off of NXT because she doesn't have to be on that show. I think that's the root of a lot of the criticism, is that you have this woman who is cross-branded. She was the NXT champion. Why would she need to be on Raw and SmackDown when we don't see Asuka appearing cross-branded? Bayley up until this week wasn't doing that. So clearly they see her, they see the value in her. I agree that it was a ratings ploy, didn't work, bringing her to NXT for that purpose. I wish she would have taken the fall at TakeOver, just because they were, telling this story with her and Io where she couldn't quite put Io Shirai away. It would have meant more, I think, for her to pin Charlotte than it did for her to beat or pin Rhea. But it's good that she's, off that brand now. They could focus on Io Shirai. Now she's back on Raw. Clearly, they're grooming her to be the next challenger to Asuka, who is going to walk out of this weekend still the Raw Women's Champion. I hope the ultimate goal is to get to Asuka and Shayna Baszler, because I think that could be an interesting, kind of two people with submission finishes who really haven't met before. Both dominated NXT back in their day. But I think Charlotte may be the intermediary. I think we could be looking at Asuka Charlotte perhaps in July, and then maybe come SummerSlam time we get to Shayna. But they see the value in Charlotte. That's why they put her on all the shows, and she did back-to-back main events. She was in the main event on Sunday, and she had a 25-minute main event on Raw Monday night. A pretty good match until the finish between her and Asuka.
So let me ask you this. I think those points are very valid from both of you. But Dave, and we'll get around to the rest of you too. Charlotte, Asuka, Becky Lynch, maybe Bayley. Are there any more top stars on the women's division in WWE? Top stars? Dave?
Well, I think you have to put Sasha Banks in there as far as fan favorite being a top star.
She doesn't mean anything.
She hasn't been doing anything either. And that's the thing. The fans love they love Bayley, but they love and adore Sasha Banks. But let's not forget, where's Shayna Baszler? Where's Bianca Belair? Two young up-and-coming stars that have potential. But Charlotte Flair is the one that, first of all, she has the name appeal. She looks the part. I challenge anyone to find better robes and outfits than Charlotte right now. Everything she does is top-notch that she's doing. And by putting her on Raw and SmackDown, it's telling people, if you really want to see her, you have to go on Wednesdays to NXT. It didn't work. That's why they took the belt off her. That's why Charlotte didn't get beat, because it still keeps her in the mix of all the brands where she can bounce around. I think that by her not getting beat keeps her in the hunt on NXT, where she can show up and say, hey, like she said on Monday, I didn't lose. I didn't get pinned. She can always go back there down the road. But she's the money. She's the one you can put on, and I say this about certain stars. You can put on Good Morning America, The Today Show, Regis and Kathy Lee, even though it's no longer Regis and Kathy Lee. But shows like that where she represents the company the right way. You can't put Shayna Baszler on there. You definitely can't put Asuka on there right now either. So you have to go with someone.
Can I ask you a question? Was this all because Shayna Baszler was supposed to – I heard a rumor that Shayna Baszler was supposed to win the Royal Rumble and wasn't, and got removed from winning that match because of the NXT failing ratings. So we might not even be talking about this if NXT wasn't losing to AEW.
But here's a question. I think that is a point. They are losing, quote unquote, to AEW, except by 6,000 viewers this week, so it's essentially a tie. All three of you have said now that the ratings experiment was the reason Charlotte got put back to NXT, and that experiment failed. How is that? How are we measuring that? Just simply that they are lower, as they are for all shows, or that they didn't achieve victory over AEW on a weekly basis? How has Charlotte being in NXT failed in the ratings?
Well, I don't know if it's her that has failed in the ratings, because let's be honest, they brought Finn Balor to NXT also, and that hasn't moved the needle.
A long time ago.
And when NXT debuted, right, a long time ago.
But it was still, within 3 months? How long has it been?
It's been longer than that.
It's been longer than that.
October?
Has it? Oh, I've been quarantined forever. It feels like it's
no, you're trying to skew the conversation because
no, I'm not. No, I'm not. But it's like when they brought Finn Balor on, everyone's like, oh, now it's going to be war because Finn Balor is equal to a Chris Jericho in some people's minds.
Well, I had a problem with Charlotte winning the Rumble and going to fight for the NXT Championship. I didn't understand it. That's a story for another day. But I think why it didn't work is because everyone had already seen her so much on Raw and or SmackDown that the NXT is like the land of the cool kids. And from the fans' perspective, and it's, the best wrestling on television, that the fans will say that. So I don't think that's why it worked. I think they were just they didn't want to see her. That Finn was fresh, hadn't been on TV for a while. Charlotte, not to much of her detriment, was oversaturated, and I think it just didn't work in NXT because the fans didn't want to see her.
You know what? The reason why NXT is not winning in the ratings is because the show isn't as cool looking as AEW. At the end of the day, you have to look at the visual event. And I've said this before, NXT is like watching a DC movie, very dark, very brooding, like Batman Begins. You watch AEW, it's like watching Thor Ragnarok. There's humor, there's lots of bright colors, there's all different things going on, there's a different atmosphere. And the fans, it's hard enough to watch a show without people in the audience. NXT, they do a terrible job of that.
Yeah, but here's the thing also. Here's the thing also, though. People sometimes forget that before all of this stuff and the empty arena shows, AEW was still winning every single week. So when they were going head-to-head and you had a building full of people at Full Sail, with the exception of maybe a week here and a week there, AEW was dominating in the overnight ratings even back then.
Yep.
I agree. It's got a more vibrant feel. I think there's just more life and more variety to the show. NXT's in a bit of a rut. I haven't seen this week's show yet. I heard good things about it. NXT is still a very good product, but there's just some life to it that AEW has that they don't. So I don't think it's fair to put it all on Charlotte Flair just to kind of bring it back to the original point. But that's why, again, that was the purpose. I'm certain that was a large part of why she was brought over to that brand. Just having a main roster person, maybe it wasn't Charlotte, maybe it would have been somebody else they thought would help elevate the show. And it didn't work. I do think you run the risk of overexposure. It doesn't matter how good she is. You've got 3 shows. If you put the same person on all 3 shows in a prominent position, people are going to start to get a little tired of it, and she's not going to feel as special. So I think for her sake, it's good to get her away from that show and not overexpose her so much, because otherwise she won't feel, as special as she did before.
Did AEW ever lose these wars, though? Even if, realistically, their talent, should they, though? You really think they should have?
As far as losing the week to week?
Their talent roster is far superior than NXT. Far superior.
But think about this. When we talk about ratings, so when you tune into a show and watch a show, that's like the rating of the marketing going into it. It doesn't say that the show was better or worse afterwards. It just says more people watch. Now, the trend will tell you that more people are watching AEW, obviously, on a consistent basis than NXT. But there's been a lot of dips and valleys. The audience hasn't been consistent. The results have been consistent. But that's why I asked, if we're going to say Charlotte Flair didn't deliver, and I agree, she should not be singularly blamed, if she did not deliver the ratings boost that they expected, because obviously WWE wants to be able to tout the fact that they have more people watching on Wednesdays than AEW. But if she wasn't put there for that reason, or if that didn't result in the results that they hoped, that's why I asked, who are the top female stars in the company on the level of a Charlotte Flair? Because maybe that's why she was put across all 3 brands, so that she could elevate others.
You know what? That's the thing. You could have sent Roman Reigns to NXT. I don't think it would have made a difference, because Roman Reigns wouldn't have had the talents to work with to make it a Roman Reigns type match. Who would Roman Reigns have been in a program with down in NXT? He would have had to have run through Adam Cole. That wouldn't have worked. He would have had to run through Undisputed Era, because those guys aren't beating Roman Reigns. So it was a nice experiment. It didn't work. I thought Charlotte did the best she could. She did elevate some. She gave the rub to Mia Yim. She gave the rub to Bianca Belair. Obviously now Io, winning that match. And she also made Rhea Ripley almost a household name. She's a star.
Well, I just think they need to stop bringing Raw and SmackDown people to NXT and just sign some people, because I feel like the fans are seeing through it, unfortunately.
Yeah, and even before the Charlotte experiment, I mean, to give them some credit, they tried to make NXT something special to try to lure in new viewers. If you go back to Survivor Series, NXT was popping up on Raw and SmackDown every week. They won at Survivor Series. Rhea became a big star long before she mixed it up with Charlotte. And maybe Charlotte winning the Rumble and going after that championship was just another way to, in the eyes of the fans, kind of say, hey, NXT is on the same level. And it just doesn't seem like fans are buying into it.
They had some major people show up on NXT right before Survivor Series too, and I believe they won that war because they had Gallows and Anderson, AJ Styles, Seth Rollins, Becky Lynch. Yeah, I mean, everybody was on that show.
Well, interesting dialogue for sure. You know, I've been a long time fan of Charlotte. I don't think her star power has fallen at all. But I think some fans who are just natural Charlotte haters are taking advantage of this opportunity to say that she's not as great as everyone thinks she is because the ratings didn't improve. She's losing championships, all this other stuff, where there's obviously a broader picture here, a bigger picture. I don't think it's arguable that there's a larger female star, a bigger female star in professional wrestling right now than that of Charlotte Flair. Would any of you disagree?
No, we've lived through this with how many superstars? Roman, Cena, Shawn, all these guys.
Yeah,
everyone wanted them to go away.
But I think it's a bit of I don't know if it's fair to compare Charlotte to those stars. I don't think it's fair to compare her to a Cena or a Roman Reigns because I don't feel like she's being shoved down our throat. I feel like she's just being utilized.
Right, in a time where they need a lot of star power because when we were going through all this, people couldn't travel, et cetera, et cetera. So, yes, I just feel that this happens all the time. Somebody has, the rocket to them. They get it. They're the biggest star in the industry, and then all of a sudden, everyone wants them to go away. And then they go away like John Cena, and everyone misses them. So,
well, and that's my next question. Do we miss Roman Reigns?
Yes.
You do, Dave?
Oh, I miss all the stars they don't have right now.
Political answer, Jason?
I think they could definitely use more star power on these shows.
Another political answer. You guys are good. You see this 2020 ticket opening up, don't you?
I'm the write-in candidate. What are you talking about?
You'll probably win.
I mean, think about it. I've said this. It's not just creative on the shows that's very hokey pokey and whatever, but
turn yourself
there's
around.
There's no stars. There's no star power. There's, it's like, yeah, you have Drew McIntyre.
Edge, Orton.
Okay, so they show up once every 4 months now?
God, I hope not.
Yeah, I mean, coming out of the pay-per-view Sunday, who knows when we're going to see Edge after that.
Exactly. There's no consistency as far as studs. And right now, Drew McIntyre had a ton of fire and heat and non-existent. They've made him into a goof.
To your question, Damien, I think we all miss Brock Lesnar, right?
No, not now. I don't, because Brock would kill everybody on the show. There's nobody even close to being in Brock's league right now. Who has truly gotten over since WrestleMania on the Raw brand?
Apollo Crews.
And you brought up
Theory.
Yeah, you brought up Bianca Belair. I think she's probably the most talented woman on that roster right now, but she's not utilized.
Last few weeks.
She's not utilized.
There you have it. It's so bad right now. You have Miz and Morrison in a main event heavyweight title match on the SmackDown.
There it was. You copied that, right? Both of you? Heavyweight.
But Jason agrees with me. It's terrible. I don't want to watch that.
Why isn't that six-man main eventing, or not main eventing, but why isn't that six-man match that's going to be on Friday, that six-man tag team match?
Because that's even worse.
But it's not. There's so much intrigue with that rather than a 2-on-1 handicap match. We saw this already with the Intercontinental title. Braun's already done this already.
Here's the advantage of it being a 2-on-1. It'll be over in less time than that six-man. That's the advantage.
Let's move along. Good discussion, good conversation. Another topic I want to talk about before we talk about Backlash and the greatest wrestling match ever is AEW this past week. We saw the in-ring debut of FTR, the new team, of course, formerly the Revival in WWE. But before they made that debut, they made a very shocking appearance. and that of the Jim Cornette podcast, the Jim Cornette Experience podcast. Dave, you and I talked about this with Shane Helms on Thursday's edition of Primetime Live on Fight TV. But I want to get your guys' perspective. I see the ultimate work of works happening here. I see Jim Cornette ultimately showing up to manage FTR in AEW because the heat would be tremendous. The heat would be amazing. They're not signed, they say. AEW, as we talked about on Thursday's Primetime with Shane, has banned Linda and Hulk Hogan from ever appearing at their shows. I can't imagine Jim Cornette's going to be received with open arms. But if you look at the annals of time, real life in wrestling pays a huge dividend. And all the stuff that Jim Cornette has said about everybody on the TNA roster, if you really listen to it, if you take the vitriol out that Jim Cornette uses, it's nothing different than what the Revival has been saying about the Young Bucks and many in AEW. Let's take away the emotion. Let's look at it logically. Chances of Jim Cornette even making a one-time appearance at All Out and managing FTR from a storyline perspective, this reporter sees it as perfect, but you guys are cringing and shaking your heads no. Jason, why?
So let me address that point first. From a heat perspective, it would be nuclear. I think if he was to show up in front of that crowd, I do think it would get an incredible reaction. And I don't know what Dave's perspective is on this, but I can imagine that, from a promoter's perspective, it would be like a dream scenario. Okay. Now, I agree with you on that. The likelihood of this happening, there's probably a better chance of me popping up and managing FTR than there is Jim Cornette. I think you made the comment, you said, well, some of the things that he said are not all that different than, criticisms that people like FTR have levied before. I disagree with that wholeheartedly. If you've heard some of the criticisms that he has lobbed at people, whether it be Nyla Rose, Sonny Kiss, some of the other,
Marco's just growth. Yes, I've heard it. Yes.
Yeah. So this goes far beyond him talking about, Balding Buck and Road Warrior Buck and guys who do flips and flops and all that kind of stuff. He's taken it to a personal level. Whether you agree with him or not is up to the individual. I think, and there have been some AEW talents who have spoken out on social media about this and the idea that maybe this could happen. As great as it would be from a fan reaction perspective, I think if you're Tony Khan, you're doing far too much damage, I think, to trust with your talent roster. I think it's going to cost for a one shot. It's not worth it. If you're bringing him in, if you want to bring him in to be a part-time kind of manager, I still wouldn't do it, but at least you could say, okay, we're going to get something out of it over a period of time. For a one shot to cause that much, potential problems with the other members of your roster, I wouldn't do it. I think it would be a real mistake for Tony Khan to do that. Now, I agree. I listened to the interview. I heard a lot of working going on. I don't believe for a second they're not signed to a contract. They're on a handshake agreement. Please. Yeah, give me a break. So I don't buy that for a second. I also think it was interesting listening to them talk about, well, we were upset with comments that Cody made on a podcast a few years ago. And look, I can believe they were upset at the time. When you hear Cody making comments about, oh, the Bucks are number one, these guys, they practice their matches. I'm sure that did bother them. I think it's the classic case of them taking a little bit of reality and kind of blending it into the fantasy of it all. And they were working their butts off in that interview. I thought they did a good job, but do I believe there's legitimate heat there or that they might shoot on the Young Bucks? No, I don't.
Thank you, Jason.
Yeah, for me, Jason, you're right. That would be like Jerry Lawler showing up at the ECW arena that one time.
He did.
Exactly. And that was ridiculous. That was humongous. It was great business. But let's be honest, there's a better chance of Sting bringing his rock band back together and touring the country right now before Jim Cornette says anything with AEW.
I don't see how y'all don't see this. I don't see how y'all don't see this.
The only way Jimmy Cornette would go, and I've known Jimmy for 20 years, is so far AEW is the only wrestling company he has yet to be fired from. So maybe he wants to go just for that moment.
But here's how it's framed, all right? He has long been supportive of the Revival. He's long been supportive of them publicly. They're about the only ones, along with MJF and the company, that he has publicly supported and said is good. That is your story right there.
But
that's your story. It makes all the sense in the world for him to come in, be aligned with them, be hated, be just completely booed out of the building, hated by the talent. And that is...
The AEW talent and most wrestling talents today would be so highly offended they would walk out. It's not like it was back in the 60s, 70s, 80s, where, like with Jerry Lawler, they would take a dump in his crown. Yeah. Or, you know, they'd give him a receipt in the ring. These guys will just leave. They'll walk out.
Yeah, it's not 1997.
Nobody left when Eric Bischoff came into WWE in 2002 or 3.
But he already had that stink rolled off him when he showed up in 2000.
But the thing with Bischoff never personally attacked people.
Yes, he did.
Several years, not on the podcasts.
He did it in a locker room in WCW for decades.
Okay, but here's the thing. Here's the difference.
On a podcast.
But that's all in the locker room.
True.
The public doesn't know about all the stuff that went on until now that it's all coming out.
I think if FTR had it their way, they'd have Jim Cornette as their manager.
Oh, yeah.
I think if AEW has it their way, it'll never happen. It can't.
Drew, here's the thing. We can be backstage, and I can be talking whatever I want to say about you, and it's between the boys. Mm-hmm. I go on a podcast that gets God knows how many downloads, and now I'm talking smack about you. And the world knows you don't want to like defend your manhood now.
No, I understand. You're 100% right.
That's the difference between Bischoff and Jim Cornette.
Yeah, what gets said in the locker room is locker room chatter, and that stays there sometimes. And it's he should see said said tell the phone, tell the wrestler, whatever that saying is. I understand what you're saying, but I can't see Jim Cornette in AEW. I just can't. I think there's too much heat around him, and like I said, I think FTR would absolutely love it, and they would become mega heels. But and like Jason said, they were working a lot in that.
So if they're not contracted, that means AEW allowed them to go on his podcast.
If
they are contracted, rather.
Their whole thing is they might show up in New Japan, right, for a run there for something like Jericho does, all that. So he could show up there. He could, Cornette could show up in New Japan with them, but I don't see it happening in AEW.
Yeah, and that's a good point actually. If they are free, whatever deal they have to make independent appearances. We can see Cornette manage FTR. It's just not going to be in AEW. And look, I think if it was just comments limited to Kenny Omega and the Bucks, they probably would be willing to just kind of look past it and let him come in for a one shot. But whether it's Joey Janela, all the other people, Joey Nutella, he calls him. It's all the different talents that he's insulted. I just think that they would lose an incredible amount of respect. And if you're a promoter, you've got to weigh that and say, you know what, for a one shot, it's not worth it.
I mean, Corrigan and Lagana did it. They got rid of him from NWA because of some – and he had said that before back in the 90s on WWF television.
But that there was recorded and put in a can, and nobody cleaned it up.
And I'm not discrediting anything or not pointing fingers here. I understand.
We've been backstage at AEW shows, and their locker room is sweet. I mean, everyone gets along. There's harmony. You don't feel tension like you would feel at a WWE show. They're not going to disrupt that. Right now, they have a great atmosphere. They have a great working environment. And as awesome as it would be to see Jim Cornette in AEW managing FTR against the Young Bucks, it would be great.
It's perfect.
But here's the thing: how much more money can you possibly make if they're already selling out their pay-per-views? That's not going to sell out the show if it's already sold out.
Yeah, it's just to get them more heat, and they don't need it. I mean, they're not going to sell any more tickets. No offense to Jim Cornette by him showing up.
And I think it does boil down to money if you're going to do that, because it affects the credibility of two groups. It affects the credibility of Jim Cornette. His podcast would then be viewed as a complete joke after that. And then it also affects the credibility of AEW, because how could you bring that guy in who has just taken a crap on all of your talents, except one or two, since the inception of your company, taking a crap on Tony Khan himself, by the way.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah. Hasn't he called him like the Mega Mark or something? Like, how could you bring him in?
But, from my perspective, I look back at the Sables coming back after suing, Jesse Ventura getting involved with WWE again after suing. It's different, but it's still things they did to hurt that business.
But Vince McMahon is a completely different animal than Tony Khan. Vince McMahon.
We don't know that. We don't know that.
Oh, of course you do.
I don't know how
McMahon.
I don't know how Tony Khan is backstage. I have no idea.
Vince
You don't
McMahon,
know
I
Vince
see
is
as
backstage either.
he's the guy that. Here's the thing: we've seen Tony Khan at events.
Yep.
He's very talent friendly. Vince McMahon is not. You don't see Vince McMahon in the hotel bar with the talent. You don't.
I think he's probably past that now, but
Well-
one time he probably was.
I'm sure he was. But at the end of the day, and like I said on Thursday with Shane Helms, if they're going to ban Linda Hogan from AEW, you know there is no chance that Jim Cornette's going to show up.
I think that's a good point. I really do.
We'll leave that there until it happens, and I'll tell all you guys how just like I'm going to win the draft, how wrong you were. But you are entitled to your opinion. This is the Lounge. And the final thing I want to talk about in the Lounge is a match happening this Sunday at Backlash, which used to be one of my favorite WWE pay-per-view events just because of the swinging hooks.
The sights, yes.
Yes.
I was going to say the same thing.
Not to mention some of the classics that were on that show.
Who cares? It's the hooks. It's all about the swinging hooks. It was like an engineering marvel to me. I'd be there, and I think I went to one. I just sat there and looked at these hooks.
Doesn't take much to entertain Damien, I see.
It does not.
No,
Any
not
light
at all.
Swinging hooks.
Well.
Or-
So, the greatest wrestling match ever. There has to be some shenanigans here. They cannot be hyping this match between Edge and Randy Orton as the greatest wrestling match happening without something that is going to be the complete opposite of the greatest wrestling match ever. We did be the booker last night with Shane Helms, did Dave and I. So I'm going to exclude and defer back to that show for our comments on it. But I definitely want to hear what you, Andrew, and you, Jason, have to say about what you expect out of this matchup at Backlash, because the hype machine is massive for this thing, and the expectations are set even higher than Tony Schiavone set for us on Nitro every Monday night when it was the greatest Monday night in the history of wrestling every Monday night. Jason, what do you say?
Yeah, I think it was very telling. Edge did an interview this past week, and he was asked about that. He goes, well, what do you think about this hype? It's the greatest match ever. And he said, when Paul Heyman and Vince McMahon first came to him, he thought they were joking. And then he quickly realized that they weren't. And if it were up to him, he said he would not have promoted it this way, because if you think about it, think about how unfair it is, right? To him and to Randy Orton, especially Edge, though. Edge is having his first straight singles match in 9 years. And now he's got it's like Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey, the greatest show on earth. All of a sudden, you've got the greatest wrestling match ever, which this has been WWE at its worst, in my opinion. I know why they're doing it. It's a promotional tactic. But when they beat you over the head with it every single week, even they have poor Samoa Joe on commentary forced to say this line every week. The issue I have with that, Edge and Orton, right, going into WrestleMania and now coming out of it, is this personal storyline with a backstory that goes back over a decade. So it's like this really like almost like a blood feud. And because of this constant hammering home every week, multiple times, the greatest wrestling match ever, they've turned it into a clown show. And so that's part of what I don't like about it. I think that I don't expect there to be interference or any kind of shenanigans like Damien mentioned. I honestly see this as just probably being a very good professional wrestling match. It may not be the match of the year even, let alone it's not going to be the best match ever. And I see, Randy Orton probably comes out on top because all Edge has to do, the story isn't that he has to win. The story is that he has to just hang with Orton and just show that he can still do it after so many years off. I think that's the story they're telling here. I think if they go out and have a very good match, it can't be any worse than their WrestleMania match unless it goes 40 minutes again. Just shave 10 or 12 minutes off and just give me a good professional wrestling match and I'll be happy. So
your expectations are not set based on the title of it being the greatest wrestling match ever?
No, because I don't have – my issue is not with the talent. My issue is with the dumb promotion that they've put into this show because I guess they figure somehow it's going to get more people. It's going to get more eyeballs on it. I think the promotion is incredibly dumb. Don't get me wrong. But I'm just going to hopefully just enjoy it for what it is. I don't want to take it out on them because I think they're already, handicapped going into this thing because I think it's very unfair to build an entire pay-per-view around the match that can't possibly live up to that billing.
Yeah.
I mean, how do you even define the greatest wrestling match ever? Some people might think that Hurricane beating The Rock on Raw is the greatest wrestling match ever. All right. So how do you compare that to Hogan Andre and some of the great matches of all time? I think if they just go out there and they just have a 25-minute barn burner, then people will be happy. But I think it was unfair. I think it's if I were a performer and I looked at this, you'd have the weight of the world on your shoulders. I don't know. I mean, I would be upset too if I were Edge, and he seems like he wouldn't have gone that road either.
Can you measure it by the number of leg slaps we're going to get in the match, maybe?
Ooh.
You have to ask Orton. He could probably tell you that.
Andrew,
You know Randy's going to throw a couple of those in there, too.
Oh,
You know he's going to.
Oh, yes.
Andrew, greatest wrestling match ever. What do you think we're going to see? Is it going to be on par with some of the greatest wrestling matches ever, or is this all a ploy to get our attention to then walk away from it completely with some kind of shenanigans?
So to your first question, no, I don't think it's going to be the greatest wrestling match ever. And to Jason's point, they've done everything they possibly can, bringing in Shawn Michaels. The theme song to this pay-per-view is the greatest by, I believe it's either Fall Out Boy or somebody, I don't know, which is another it's almost ridiculous what they're doing to these two fantastic performers. And like Jason said, all they had to do was go in there and wrestle for 20 to 25 minutes. And I think people would have loved the match anyway. We saw a lot of shenanigans in the WrestleMania match. I was probably the only psychopath that liked that match, so I understand. But for me, no, I think this is doomed from the jump. I do, with the whole Shawn Michaels stuff and then now involving Christian, right? Edge and Randy Orton are the only thing that I'm watching Monday Night Raw. I literally stop what I'm doing, and I'm like, okay, I need to pay attention here. And they've taken that away with this greatest wrestling match ever tagline, because now everyone's expectations are through the roof. And I have a funny feeling that they have time to edit this match because we all know it's probably going to be taped. I hope they do a good job. It's already okay. So it's already been taped. So I hope they do a good job, because if they don't, then that's on WWE. And this should have never had this tagline from the jump. But shenanigans, I could see Christian doing something, maybe screwing Edge or screwing Orton. I don't know. I really don't.
But let's be fair. Since the Royal Rumble, what's been the best WWE match we've seen on Raw and or SmackDown?
On Raw or SmackDown, I'd have to think.
No. Of the two brands, I'm talking pay-per-view matches. What has been the best match we've seen since the Royal Rumble? No, I'm not counting NXT.
Are you counting cinematic matches too? Because I think the Boneyard match was good. Okay.
I said match. It doesn't matter.
That's why I asked.
I was going to say the Boneyard match too.
Okay, so with that being said, we're both going with a cinematic match is the best match in the last 6 months. You have two of the best storytellers on the entire roster, on both rosters. That's why this is going to be the greatest match of all time, because in the last 6 months, there's been nothing good.
But they could have they could have done the same thing for Shawn Michaels Taker 2 at WrestleMania, and they didn't, because they didn't need to do that. That's why I think they're doomed with this match. I really do. You don't.
But you're missing my point, Drew. Right now, it's the best match ever because we haven't seen anything good. We can't think of the last time. You had to go back to Taker, Shawn Michaels. You can't. When was the last time we saw a match in WWE where, wow, that was fantastic?
AJ and Shinsuke, WrestleMania 30. I mean, there's a lot.
Okay.
There's a lot.
Okay, right. But how long ago was that?
2 years ago.
Exactly.
Well, I mean, yeah, but that's not fair though, because I mean, there have been great WWE matches in the last few years. I'd have to, put a list together if I wanted to put a list together, but and not just WrestleManias. I mean, they've had some really great matches at pay-per-view since the Shawn Undertaker or AJ Shinsuke. It's just this environment doesn't help, and that's another reason too. They're calling this the greatest wrestling match ever. To do a match like this in front of an audience, I mean, they'll have NXT people in the audience, but you have no fans.
Yeah,
and the fans are an important they're an important element of these matches here, and you're promoting this as the greatest match ever, and there's no fans in attendance.
That's another great point by Jason. When they announced this was the greatest or going to be the greatest match ever, I immediately thought there's going to be fans at Backlash, and now there's not, and I think they're doomed. I really do.
Well, gentlemen, thank you very much for those opinions and those comments here in the lounge. I want to give you the opportunity now to tell us a little bit more about how we can hear more of your voices and your oratory skills. And we'll start with you, Andrew. I understand you've got a whole new gig going on there with your broadcasting.
Yeah, I have a couple of people that I'm working with right now, Jeff Lewis, Amanda, and Issa Ramos. We do SNE Network. We do Chicks Getting Raw. We do Chicks Getting Raw, which is a Raw review.
Isn't that disbanded?
No, this is a female's perspective on professional wrestling. You could
Girls
follow
Gone
us.
Wild. I thought there was some legal.
No, I'm not a part of the Girls Gone Wild crew or anything like that.
Wasn't Paul Heyman part of that?
Bischoff. It was Bischoff. And
Bischoff was?
the other guy.
Oh, him and
his
Harvey.
partner.
Steve Harvey.
Jason Harvey, yes.
Jason Harvey. Very different.
Yeah. But yeah, you could follow us at SNE Network on Twitter, and we have a YouTube link and all that other stuff. Just trying to get into this, and we're going to have sports, and it's been fun. And I'm looking forward to this Sunday.
Jason, will we hear anything about chicks getting raw on the Solid Monster Sound Off?
No, but I'm going to have to give that some thought now. I mean, I might bring in some more subscribers to the channel. I'm going to have to give this some serious consideration. But I can't top that, but I can tell you that I have my Solid Monster Sounds Off podcast that drops on all major platforms every Sunday. And, of course, Sunday night after Backlash, I'll be live on YouTube talking about quite possibly the greatest wrestling match ever.
Quite possibly.
Quite possibly. You got to say it the right way. Quite possibly. Everybody has to say it the right way.
Shivani never said quite possibly.
No, he was very sure of himself.
They should put a question mark at that promo. That's what they should do. Greatest wrestling match ever? Question mark. That's what they should do.
Yeah, they should lock that promo up in a box and throw it away in the dumpster in the back. That's what they should do.
Well, we appreciate you guys joining us here on Fight TV, and we'll hear more about Fight in a moment. But Dave Hero, you're wearing a hot-looking shirt under that jacket.
Yes.
I understand.
Brand new,
hot off the silk screen presses.
It is. It's from the Collar and Elbow Group, the collarandelbowbrand.com. Use promo code PWR360 at collarandelbowbrand.com.
Yeah, it's
Check
like
it
that
out.
wheel gimmick, 360 all the way around.
Yeah, it
We
is.
see it,
We are-
there you go.
We haven't.
Look at that. See?
Scared to show the rest? What are you?
I know.
That's awesome.
Is it not a P? Is it an RWR or something? Show the show.
No, not at all. Well, first of all, the hot chicks are below it. I don't want that to get on TV.
How did you get the chicks? That's my gimmick.
So so go to PWR. PWR360 is the promo code at collarandelbowbrand.com and save some money and get your shirts.
Dave, would you have this Randy Orton Edge match last 10 seconds and have Orton just beat him quickly?
That's what I want.
Listen. Randy Orton and Edge have too much professional pride to do that.
Okay.
What
Randy
if it's
Orton.
a greater story?
No, okay. Then Randy Orton. If that's the case, then I guarantee Randy Orton is not tweeting Tommaso Ciampa.
I think that's a work, though.
Not a chance. No way. It's way
The
too
wife's at
personal.
home. It's not a work.
You've got to admit, though, if they're promoting this as the greatest wrestling match of all time, I have to say one of the greatest things that I would probably ever see is if in the first 5 seconds of the match, the bell rings and Randy Orton just kicks him in the crotch and gets disqualified.
Yes.
They did that at WrestleMania. He hit 2 RKOs, and we thought that was it.
And
It ended up
then
being 45 minutes.
Hey,
bridge us to
let's-
SummerSlam from there. Have the big match when maybe you can have people there at SummerSlam. This is a go-between. This is a distraction in the larger story, I think.
okay.
You'd have to make
But-
that match a cage match or something.
How many fans were upset when Brock Lesnar legit knocked Randy Orton out of that match at SummerSlam?
Oh,
I was there. Everybody was kind of like gasping, and that's the reaction.
Yeah,
they were
because
looking
you
for.
wanted to see that match. There's a lot of people that love Edge that cannot wait to see him.
all the
And,
more
you know,
reason to do it.
You're a promoter. Do you think that, and you talked about this, do you think Vince McMahon really cares? He just, whatever he's going to do or say or whatever narrative he wants for his company
here's
is
the
going to
thing.
happen.
Hold on a second. Pump the brakes. What is the one match on Backlash that people are going to tune in to watch?
And what's the one match that he would
No,
probably just say, give me 5
Answer
seconds and we're out of here?
Answer my question.
That
What is
match.
the one? Okay, that's the only draw on the entire show. Because you
We're
have
already
two-
watching.
I don't even remember any of the other matches, even though we talked about them last night on Be the Booker.
Listen, Bobby Lashley's been stuck in neutral for 19 months.
Hopefully he
Now
wins
he's
the
in a
title.
heavyweight title match. Apollo Crews finally shows up again against Andrade, who can't win either.
I'm sorry, Damien. I know you're trying to get out of here. I apologize.
But I'm just saying, right now, Randy Orton versus Edge is the only marquee match they have on that show. They can't go 5 minutes. They can't.
Well, we'll see what happens. Backlash is tomorrow night. I can't wait to see how Be the Booker plays out, David Hero, because Shane keeps whooping your ass every time you guys do your fantasy booking on our Friday night shows after SmackDown. But I also can't wait to hear your perspectives next week on what actually ends up happening with Backlash. Will it be the greatest wrestling match ever? We will find out. And let's just come on, be real. It's not going to be. There's just no chance in hell. I mean, it's just not going to be. So let's see what they do tomorrow night at Backlash. So thank you very much, Jason. Thank you, Andrew, for joining us. I hope Linda is still alive. She was going to try to join in, having some type of she's got a power outage at her home and was not able to join us. So I hope she is not.
Too many things are plugged in at her place. Needs more batteries.
I smell David Hero's got this one. Something's up
Yeah.
here.
No, not at all.
Thank you, Jason. Thank you, Andrew. We're going to take a timeout, learn more about Fight TV and Collar and Elbow. When we come back, it's, what do you call it, Dave? Pope has spoken, PHS?
DHS. Yes.
We'll be right back here on the Pro Wrestling Report Primetime Super Show.
You people want to see it?
The wait is over.
Got to give the people what they want.
All Elite Wrestling is now available on AEW Plus.
What are we seeing?
This is your chance to watch AEW Dynamite, commercial-free and live every Wednesday night.
Let's do this.
Exclusively on the Fight Digital Sports television platform.
AEW.
AEW Plus is available in over 100 countries outside the US, Canada, Germany, and France. AEW Plus can be viewed on your smart TV, mobile device, Apple TV, Roku, Amazon Fire, or at Fight.tv.
You ain't seen nothing yet.
Starting this month, AEW Plus will also feature every episode of AEW Dark. Download the Fight app now and join the revolution today.
Following announcement has been paid for by Collar and Elbow.
Folks, there's Jumpin' Jeff Farmer. Jeff, a while back, what a match you had with Motley.
Yep.
A hero to many, but without a villain, there can truly never be a hero.
Motley Cruz, you turned the tables on me. You turned the tables in a wrong way.
Now the tables have been turned again. The other way. Collar and Elbow has signed the most villainous of villains to be a sponsored athlete.
Mr. Buddy Lee, did you hear that?
That's right, Motley Cruz representing Collar and Elbow.
Did you hear him?
I heard it.
Get me excited, man.
Oh, we are going full force with this game plan.
Gang plan or no gang plan, you come my way. Defeat is waiting on you, son.
Collar and elbowbrand.com.
Full force.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Pro Wrestling Report Primetime Super Show. Davey and Nelson along with David here on David. I'm excited here on a Saturday night. It's always great to go to the lounge.
It's fantastic. I mean, you know what? What a great night of WrestleSpeak. Except now it's my turn.
No, it's not.
Yeah, it is.
No, it's not.
Why wouldn't it be? Why not?
Because we didn't talk about TNA.
Oh,
Impact Wrestling.
okay, fine. But I still want the last word. I still want to de-double something here.
Why? We talked about ratings just a minute ago with Charlotte, and you guys blaming her for NXT losing the AEW. You know why we have ratings issues with this
I
show?
did not.
The
I did not
last segment
blame
every
Charlotte.
week is just we just plummet.
Well, make my screen bigger then. Shrink yours a little bit.
Impact Wrestling. We haven't talked about them in about a minute, but we're going to talk about them right now because they made news this past week with the debut of Deonna Purrazzo.
Yes.
Not Palazzo, the place in Vegas that's going to open up soon. They are, she debuted for Impact Wrestling. Huge, big deal for them, obviously. Well used, good debut. But now we've seen, and we talked about this last week, their Slammiversary teaser indicating that there are a lot of people on their way back home, if you will, to TNA. And now this past week, EC3 with a very cryptic video and the promo, Rhino cut, indicating that his special tag team partner at Slammiversary has, quote-unquote, got kids, which we know is a bit of a paid references, obviously. Heath Slater formerly endorsed Heath Slater of WWE.
Yes.
So, Dave,
Yes.
is this it? Is Impact going to now welcome home a lot of their departed stars and welcome in several new stars that have been recently released by WWE? And if so, should they?
Well, absolutely. I mean, when you have the opportunity to get someone like EC3, who has once again reinvented himself, looks fantastic, looks the part, has a brand new narrative as to what he's trying to get across. the TNA Impact Wrestling fans are going to love to see him come back because that's where he legit made himself a name. Heath Slater and Rhino, legit buddies, good friends. And Scott D'Amore and Rhino are super tight. So why wouldn't you want to bring in Heath Slater and Rhino, who they were a great act together on SmackDown and Raw, winning the SmackDown Tag Team
I forgot about that. Good point.
So I mean, it's good business right there. I think there's room for a couple more. I don't know if that's going to include a Kurt Hawkins. You have to believe Zack Ryder's going to wait to go to AEW. But I mean, it's going to be a good show. And TNA Impact Wrestling is slowly, I shouldn't even say slowly, they're making waves. They're doing good business. And it's only a matter of time. If they can get themselves a better TV deal, I think that they could be.
What's wrong with Access?
Well, that's not everywhere.
But they own
That's
it.
the problem. Right. But it's
I don't think you
everywhere.
get a better TV deal than that.
No, but I can't watch it.
Really?
In my house, yes.
You got to get cable.
I do have cable. I don't have that channel for some reason. So that right there is an issue. But, I mean, TNA, you have Rob Van Dam, you have Katie Forbes, you have Joey Ryan, you have Moose, you have Tessa Blanchard. You have a lot. You have Michael Elgin. You have a lot of great talents. And Brian Cage left. Well, maybe now EC3 replaces Brian Cage. I think that's an upgrade because EC3 is he's a three-tool kind of guy. He can do everything. He looks the part, he talks the part, he walks the part. He's going to be a champion back there again.
Will it move the needle for TNA or Impact Wrestling?
You know what? If anything, it will create more discussion on social media. I don't know if it's going to, be a big spike in their ratings just because there's so much wrestling on TV.
Yeah.
Is TNA Impact Wrestling basically it's the fourth or fifth option right now on television. You have Raw, SmackDown, AEW, NXT, AEW Dark, Impact Wrestling, Ring of Honor, and New Japan. And then you have OVW on the YTA network. There's so much wrestling out there. It's hard to watch all of it.
That it is, and I will admittedly say I've not been tuning in at all, rather, to Impact Wrestling, unfortunately, and it's not for, well, actually, I don't want to, but I don't want to because it's Impact. I just, as you said, Dave, it's so much wrestling. It's too much wrestling. But I've heard from a lot of our viewers and a lot of people in the business that Impact has been putting out some solid programming as of late and deserves another watch, deserves to be checked out again. Especially if they can make noise with Slammiversary, with some of these debuts and returns, if you will. I struggle to believe they can make truly measurable noise, and that's not a knock on the stars or the talents or whatever. They're just not they're not on the radar as much as the other wrestling companies you just mentioned, and that's a shame. But if they can make some noise at Slammiversary, that would be nothing but good for the company and the talents.
But let's be fair. TNA/Impact Wrestling have shot themselves in the foot so many times. Not by the new regime, but by the Dixie Carter-led regime. And it's kind of like the fans says, you know what? We're done. We can't keep supporting. Because if you look who they all had, they had AJ Styles. They had Bobby Roode. They had James Storm. They had Eric Young. They had Zema Ion. They had Robbie E. They had Gunner. I mean, they had Samoa Joe. So many. They had Bobby Lashley. I mean, they had so many young.
And we had David Hero's picture you guys will ever see of David Hero. Oh, you're welcome back. You disappeared for a minute there. It was freeze frame. It's okay.
Oh,
sorry. All right.
Well, but did you hear what I was saying though? All the talent they used to have. So it's like, well, the fans kind of like, okay, we're done. We can't do this anymore. And especially the way they had Drew McIntyre.
Yeah.
Remember when it was Drew McIntyre versus Matt Hardy versus EC3 for the TNA World Impact Heavyweight Championship? Remember that? Remember?
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, God, I go, they have Matt, they have a guy that couldn't beat Hornswoggle, and they have EC3 in their main event. And look what happened. You know what I mean? Drew McIntyre becomes a huge star. Look at all of the legit studs they had, and they couldn't get it done. So right now it's a rebuilding and rebranding effort by TNA Impact Wrestling.
We'll see what happens at Slammiversary just a couple of weeks, I believe. And obviously tomorrow night, Backlash. If you haven't already, check out Be the Booker, where you and Shane picked and fantasy booked the matches for that event, including what we just talked about before, the greatest wrestling match ever. And with that,
let's talk about the greatest wrestling match ever.
You just hijacked my show from me.
I did, because it's my segment. This is where the ratings spike. So we heard what you had to say. I heard the Sala Monster, and I heard Drew Baydala. It's the best wrestling match we are going to see for a while, because you have the two best guys going at the two best storytellers, the two guys that can get emotion, they can sell, they know timing, they know each other better than anybody else. It's going to be a fantastic match. I know that certain people on this panel want to see it done in 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 minutes. You can't do it, because the pride and the egos of the guys involved. Randy Orton is a legit top 5 Hall of Famer. He's one of the best. I would have loved to have seen Randy Orton right now against Steve Austin or The Rock in their prime, or Hulk Hogan in their prime, because I think Randy is that good against Randy Savage in his prime. And then you have Edge, who is just full of emotion. Like, you want to cheer for him. Like, you want to cry with him when he walks to the ring, because you believe all of the blood, sweat, and tears and setbacks he's gone through to get to this moment, that these two guys are going to do everything they absolutely possibly can to live up to such a high billing of greatest wrestling match of all time, or greatest wrestling match ever. And it won't be, because there's so many great legends that have had great, awesome matches in the past. But like Shane Helms says, this is the pandemic era. And I think for the pandemic era, this will be the greatest wrestling match ever for the pandemic era. And with that, David Hero has spoken.
Okay. Well, thank you, Dave. I want to remind everybody to check out the Be the Booker from last night.
You're just gonna just gloss that over? That was a lot of verbiage and oratory skills right there.
There's a reason for everything, and I'll tell you after the show. But tomorrow, Sunday, is Super Sunday Fun Day from the Pro Wrestling Report. So you get to watch in succession tomorrow afternoon our Thursday edition with Shane Helms of PrimeTime, our Be the Booker special edition with PrimeTime with Shane Helms as well, and this show on replay. We'll get you prepared for Backlash before Backlash happens. So thank you very much for joining us, and for that one, this is Damian Nelson, and for the rest of the PWR team, saying thank you so much for joining in. We'll see you again tomorrow during Super Sunday Fun Day. Bye-bye, everybody.